Today, Project HRT is back, and we're going to put a train in it. The Drivetrain. It's a hot small block Ford 6-speed transmission and a bulletproof rear end, all guaranteed to smoke this hot rod truck's 22-inch wide tires. That's all today here on Trucks.
Hey, welcome to Trucks. Well, if you're a true gearhead car nut like we are, after a while these vehicles, well, they take on personalities. They become characters. Heck, we even name them. And even people that don't live for their project vehicles, well, they can't deny that they get a certain sense or a feeling from the overall look or stance of a vehicle. And from there, well, they're hooked. Wheels and tires, well, they set the mood. Paint follows form, proportion, and style. And before long, you've created an extended member of your family with its own unique identity.
And the project we're working on today shows the beginning of a pretty strong personality and a lot of genuine muscle, which is where we're going to focus right now. And if you remember, this all started when we took a little road trip up to Lawton, Michigan to Legend Motors, Downs Design, and gave you guys a tour of their manufacturing facility.
And we got an insider's view of everything from concept drawings, clay modeling, fiberglass mold creation, all the way up to finished street rods and muscle cars.
And they put together one of their popular 37 Ford trucks for us, but made room for these massive Mickey Thompson HR1 wheels and Sportsman SR tires. They added a Pro's Pick steel bed with 40 Ford fenders, and the cab is molded with a chop top and Mini Cooper headlights in the fenders that, when assembled, give this hot rod truck looks that kill. And as you guys can see, we've got this thing all blown apart, so we can pay closer attention to the foundation of our HRT project truck, namely the drivetrain, which, as you guys know, is really the heart of any vehicle. Now, this is far from an original 37 Ford, so obviously it's not going to get an original engine. But we wanted to stay true to the blue oval and deviate from the engine a lot of guys reach for when it comes time to choosing some motivation for their street rod, the small block Chevy.
That's right, he said Chevy. But the reason a lot of guys reach for a small block Chevy in their rod, even a Ford like ours, is because you can make big power with these engines and they're cheap to work on. But a lot of guys would bristle at the thought of one of these sitting in between the rails of a classic Ford.
Well, we like the idea of a Ford in a Ford as well. And in our opinion, there's no better place to start than the time-tested and proven 302 small block. But we're not talking about vintage blocks. What we had in mind is what made the Fox Mustangs such great performance machines. The aftermarket has built an industry on these Ford 5-liter engines. Everything from Ford's rotating assemblies to EFI upgrades. It's no big deal anymore to get around 300 ponies out of a stock block, and even a little more with some basic power adders.
So we did some digging, a couple of internet searches, and we came across a family-owned business out of Lebanon, New Jersey named EngineFactory.com. And they build Fords and they build Chevys, but what they specialize in are turnkey engine packages. Now, after a couple of phone conversations, some planning, and letting them know what our goals were, well, this is what showed up at our doorstep.
Now, this is a great looking setup, and though it's based on a 5-liter engine, internally, it's a little different. Engine Factory offers this 347 stroker engine that starts out with a 30 thousandths overbore, polished and deburred scat crank, steel I-beam rods, 10-to-1 forged pistons with chromoly rings, high-volume oil pump, and a double roller timing set, and sporting all the precision machine work it takes to clearance the block for the stroked internals. Now for the top end, hiding underneath the valve covers, we've got a full roller valve train, Edelbrock Performer RPM cylinder heads that have been massaged a little bit for better oil drain back. We got Endurashine finish on our dual plane intake manifold and Edelbrock 650 CFM electric choke carburetor, all lit off by a Pertronix distributor and a high voltage coil.
Now, driving our accessories up front is this billet aluminum serpentine system from Concept 1, pushing a PowerMaster 100 amp alternator and this aluminum sand and AC compressor, along with your typical dampener, water pump, and idler pulleys. Now, everything is very clearly labeled, and Engine Factory even gives you a DVD of the engine's run-in. So it's built right, it's a drop-in, plug-and-play issue, and it requires no tuning, which makes it the perfect engine for Project HRT. Oh, and by the way, did I mention that it pushes 415 horsepower at the crank? Now, we sent the transmission and engine specs and measurements to Downs while they were building the truck. So they went ahead and installed these chassis engineering engine mounts. They welded them to the frame rail. The isolator sits on the lower, and the upper is bolted to the engine block and sits on the isolator. It's a nice, clean setup, but we're not quite ready to drop this engine in place yet.
After the break, we'll bolt up our V8 and show you how to measure for a new drive shaft. Stick around.
Hey guys, welcome back. Today, we're working on Project HRT, dropping in our engine, transmission, and the rest of the drivetrain.
And today, we're just mocking everything up, starting with that 347 stroker we got from EngineFactory.com. But first, let's talk about a transmission. Now, we knew we wanted a standard shift just for the fun factor, and a 5-speed is a pretty common choice for a small block Ford. But we've got a 20-inch wheel with an overall tire diameter of 31 inches, so we figured an extra gear would give us the best possible performance with this combination.
So we called Richmond and had them ship us one of their 6-speed ROD overdrive transmissions. It features CNC machined and heat-treated internals, and total weight is only about 100 pounds. Now, we did some calculations to figure out what RPM we would be running at different speeds. And we decided on a 3.28 first gear ratio and ended up going with a 0.76 overdrive. Now, Richmond transmissions have a reputation of being nearly bulletproof. And one of the nice features, well, you can custom tailor your gear selection to match your vehicle's weight, engine RPM power band, rear axle ratio, tire size, etc. But really, the main reason we went with this transmission, it's a single overdrive unit compared to a lot of other late model 6-speeds which have 2 overdrives. And the advantage here is that there's tighter gear spacing, which translates to less RPM drop as you shift. Our Engine Factory 347 stroker already came with the billet steel flywheel, but this one's got to come off so we can install our McLeod steel bell housing.
Normally, this is the time that we'd install and align the clutch and pressure plate. But since we're just checking for fitment, we'll throw in the bell housing so we can bolt the transmission up. Now, that 6-speed is going to transfer all that power and energy back here, and we wanted something that was going to hold together. So we had Downs load up our chassis with a narrowed 9-inch rear end housing that's held in place by this competition engineering ladder bar setup. Now, don't be alarmed by all the surface rust that you see on this frame. This is a mock-up phase, and all that's going to get taken care of later on.
Now, to fill up the axle housing, we had Curry Enterprises send us some 31 spline axles and a loaded third member with 430 gears and a track lock limited slip. We went with a limited slip so we could have the best of both worlds. We can send power to both rear tires and still retain some street manners without the annoying clunking or chirping of a full locker or spool.
A Ford 9-inch is a common choice for a lot of car builders, mostly due to its durability. If it's good enough for NASCAR, it's good enough for us. But it's also easy to work on since the third member comes easily away from the housing.
With the engine bolted to the bell housing and transmission, we'll set it on the rear cross member and front isolators and check for any clearance issues with the SERP system up front. But the most important thing this step gives us is the ability to see what length drive shaft we need.
When you're measuring your drive shaft, go from the end of the tail housing to the center line of the yoke, and we've got exactly 48 inches. But also make a note of how much the output shaft sticks out of the tail housing, which is about 3/8 of an inch in our case. Give this information to whoever's building your drive shaft, and they can manufacture the correct amount of slip travel based on the rest of the chassis. Now, with this short of a space, we can go with a lightweight, one-piece aluminum drive shaft that's going to look good and be strong enough to get the job done, too.
Now, don't put your tape measure away just yet. You still got to give the drive shaft shop some U-joint dimensions. And the measurements they're after are the U-joint cross diameter and the cap width. To measure the cross diameter, if the U-joint yoke has locating tabs, you measure in between the tabs. In our case, we've got 3 5/8. If you don't have the locating tabs, you measure in between the flats of the yoke. And for the cap diameter, well, there's generally 3 choices. You have 1 1/16", 1 1/8", and 1 3/16". In our case, we had 1 1/8".
Up next, we'll show you how to set up a chassis for caster, camber, and tow. And later, we'll install our new drive shaft. Stay tuned.
Hey, welcome back. Well, the foundation to Project HRT is really starting to come together and take shape. And it doesn't hurt that we had such a great head start with a full rolling chassis from Downs.
But there's a lot of work to do yet before one of you can drive it home. So today, we're mocking up the drivetrain, checking for things like fit and clearance.
One of the nice things about starting with a chassis like this, aside from the fully boxed frame that looks like a piece of art, is that it's outfitted for modern components and systems like independent front suspension and rack and pinion steerings. But there are still some things that you're going to need to take care of.
When it comes to setting up a chassis properly, well, there's a lot of things to consider. But regardless of the style of suspension you're running, there's a few basic ground rules to follow. Let's start with steering geometry. For the front end, there's three basic variables you have to work with: camber, caster, and toe. Camber is the lean of the tire as viewed from above. With the tire leaning out, you've got positive camber. With it leaning in, negative. The caster, well, that's the imaginary line drawn between the upper and lower control arm ball joints as it passes through the steering knuckle. With it leaned back a little bit, you're looking at positive caster. That's what gives the car the return to center feel after you make a turn. It also helps the vehicle track straight at speed. But too much caster, it'll increase steering effort. And toe in and toe out, well, it's pretty self-explanatory. When the front of the tires are pointing in towards each other, you've got a toe in condition. Point it out, look at it toe out. So we're using a fairly common and not too expensive home alignment tool to measure caster and camber. And to measure toe, well, like we showed you guys before, you can just use a tape measure.
But remember that all we're doing right now is getting things close. Later on, when the body's on the frame, we've got the full vehicle weight on the suspension, then we can dial it in for real. With the gauge at the wheel hub center, turn the wheels until they're at a 20-degree angle to the frame rail. Then zero out the bubble and turn the wheels to the opposite position, which is just about a complete lock-to-lock turn, and then check the caster bubble. Now with the vehicle weight off the chassis, we can adjust caster by disconnecting the upper arm from the frame mount and turning the adjusters in at the rear and out at the front, pitching the center of the arm back, creating the positive caster we want. Then everything gets reassembled and checked by the gauge.
Oh, cool. We're at like 3 1/4 degrees positive. What'd you end up with?
It's about 3.5.
Good, that's right on.
So with both sides between 3 and 3.5 degrees positive caster, it's time to measure for camber.
We got nothing. No camber. Straight up and down. Need a little lean in at the top. What do you got?
0.
All right, so we're in pretty good shape. We're not going to make any adjustments now. What we're after is between 0 and 1 degree negative camber. And as the body and all the weight settles on the chassis, well, the suspension will compress and we'll probably gain a little bit of camber. Now, if we do need to make an adjustment, we'll come down here to the lower control arm, because just like the uppers, they're adjustable. But on the lowers, we want to move both ends in and out equally, so we don't alter the caster adjustment we've made up top.
To measure for toe, find a common reference point like the center mold line or even a tread to compare the front to the back. Yep. Okay, 55 1/8. All right. 54 1/4. Well, that tells us we're toed out almost a complete inch, so we'll adjust from the tie rod ends equally on each side.
Since there's no adjusting sleeve like typically found on an OEM tie rod, we'll take the rod end out of the knuckle on each side and turn it clockwise to bring the front measurement in more.
We're at 54 3/4.
All right.
All right, 54 and almost 7/8. So we're a 1/16 of an inch towed in, which is right in spec.
Now the rear suspension is adjustable as well, but unlike the front, it only has one real job to do: plant the power to the ground. So as long as you're tracking straight and the rear axle is perpendicular with the center line of the vehicle, you should be pretty well set. But the important thing here is the pinion angle, which is set under full chassis load and adjusted here at the ladder bars. And we'll do that when the truck's just about complete. For now, all we're really worried about is squaring up this rear axle.
The ladder bars use heim joints for mounting points, which are threaded into the link bars and adjustable. All we're after here is getting the left side moved forward a 1/4 inch, and we'll be tracking completely straight.
Let's see, 24 1/2, 24 1/2. We're square. That's about all we can do for now.
Hey, thanks for sticking with us as we mock up the chassis of Project HRT. And now about all we got left to do is drop in our drive shaft.
So with our U-joint dimension and drive shaft length measurements in hand, we gave Advantage Driveline a call. And they sent us this great looking lightweight aluminum drive shaft. It's fully balanced and features a steel input yoke that of course matches the spline count of our Richmond 6-speed tranny. Now if you're wondering why we didn't go with a larger diameter aluminum drive shaft, well for one, it's relatively short at only about 4 feet. And two, well, we've got a bit of a clearance issue here with the frame. So we went with a 3-inch diameter tube. And according to Advantage Driveline, even with the built 347, 430 gears, and these big old tires out back, we won't have any issues transferring the power.
Now, the reason that your pinion is always going to be offset one way or the other is to initiate needle bearing rotation. Otherwise, you end up with what's called a Bernelling effect, where the needle bearings actually establish a wear pattern inside the bearing cup. So 1 to 2 degrees of offset ensures needle bearing rotation and a smooth, long life for your universal joints.
Well, there you go. Everything dropped right in and fit really well. We are off to a great start on Project HRT. We just got to smooth out some of these welds and get rid of some of that surface rust.
Yeah, and that way we can give this chassis the degree of detail that it deserves. A good set of plug wires is just as important as anything else on your engine, and Taylor makes some of the best. And they've just come out with these Thunderbolt 8.2 millimeter performance wires for your race or street application. They feature a 50-ohm spiral wound and coated core, giving you less resistance between your coil and the spark plug, which equals a more powerful spark and a more efficient engine. The silicone 2-layer outer jacket ensures the signal with no radio interference and heat protection up to 600 degrees. They come in several different colors in universal, race, and custom fit lengths, and you can pick up a set of Taylor Thunderbolt wires for about 60 bucks. Have you ever found yourself in the situation where you've hosed down or pressure washed your engine bay, gotten everything all nicely detailed up, but when you got in your truck to leave, it wouldn't start? Well, chances are you've forced water or moisture down into an electrical connection or your distributor. Well, this stuff can get you up and running in no time. WD-40 stands for Water Displacement Perfected on the 40th try, and it was originally developed to protect the outer hull on long-range missiles against rusting. Now, not very many people know it's in this stuff, and they're not going to tell you, but here's what it does. The WD-40 is actually heavier than the water, and it displaces it, actually pushing the water out of the way. You just spray it on your electrical connectors or up in your distributor, and it pushes the moisture off the contact points, restoring your electrical connection. And it's not a bad detailer either. Thanks for watching Trucks. See you guys next week.